At age 45, Chris Downey had pretty much constructed the life he'd always wanted. An architect with a good job at a small housing firm outside San Francisco, he was happily married with a 10-year-old son. He was an assistant Little League coach and avid cyclist. And then doctors discovered a tumor in his brain. He had surgery and the tumor was safely gone, but Downey was left completely blind. What he has done in the 10 years since losing his sight as a person and as an architect can only be described as a different kind of vision. Several mornings a week, as the sun rises over the Oakland estuary in California, an amateur rowing team works the water. It's hard to tell which one of them is blind, and Chris Downey thinks that's just fine.
It's really exciting to be in a sport where nobody looks in the direction they're going. You're faced this way in the boat, and you're going that way. So, okay, even Steven. We were just talking about that whole exterior.
It's not exactly even Steven in this design meeting, where Downey is collaborating with sighted architects on a new hospital building.
Or under the canopy where you can have downlights.
But he hasn't let that stop him.
Here you are in a profession that basically requires you to read designs and draw designs. You must have thought in your head, that is insurmountable.
No.
You never thought,
I never thought
you
that.
never thought the word
actually,
insurmountable.
Lots of people, friends that were architects, and anybody else would say, oh my God, it's the worst thing imaginable to be an architect and to lose your sight. I can't imagine anything worse. But I quickly came to realize that the creative process is an intellectual process. It's how you think. So it just needed new tools.
New tools? Downey found a printer that could emboss architectural drawings so that he could read and understand through touch.
They look like normal prints, normal drawings on the computer, but then they just come out in tactile form.
So it is like Braille, isn't it?
Right.
And he came up with a way to sketch his ideas onto the plans using a simple children's toy, malleable wax sticks that he shapes to show his modifications to others. And he says something surprising started to happen. He could no longer see buildings and spaces, but he began hearing them.
The sounds, the textures, and the sound changes because there's a canopy overhead.
You can sense that we're under a canopy?
Yes. It's all a matter of how the sound works from the tip of the cane. I was fascinated walking through buildings that I knew sighted, but I was experiencing them in a different way. I was hearing the architecture, I was feeling the space.
It sounds as if you began almost enjoying, in a way, being the blind architect.
Sort of this excitement of, I'm a kid again. I'm relearning so much of architecture. It wasn't about what I'm missing in architecture, it was about what I had been missing in architecture.
Is that sufficiently different?
Oh, yeah.
Chris Downey's upbeat attitude doesn't mean that he didn't go through one of the most frightening experiences imaginable and struggle. He and his wife Rosa were living in this same home with their son Renzo, then 10, when Downey first noticed a problem while playing catch with Renzo. The ball kept coming in and out of sight. The cause turned out to be a tumor near his optic nerve. Surgery to remove it lasted 9.5 hours. He says his surgeon had told him there was a slight risk of total sight loss, but that he'd never had it happen.
When he first came out of surgery, he was able to see.
But then things started to go wrong. The next day, half his field of vision disappeared. And then...
The next time I woke up, it was all gone. It was just black.
Complete and total darkness. No light, you can't see
no light.
anything.
It's dark. It's all dark.
After days of frantic testing, a surgeon told him it was permanent, irreversible, and sent in a social worker.
She said, oh, and I see from your chart you're an architect, so we can talk about career alternatives.
Career alternatives?
Yeah.
Right away.
And been told I was officially blind for 24 hours.
And she's saying you can't be an architect
And
anymore.
she is saying we can talk about career alternatives. So I felt like these walls were being built up around me, just like, yeah, you're getting boxed in.
Alone that night in his room, Downey did some serious thinking about his son and about his own father, who had died from complications after surgery when Downey was 7 years old.
I could quickly appreciate the wonder, the joy of, I'm still here.
It was actually joy?
Yeah, it's like, I'm still here with my family. My son still has his dad.
You know, your eyes are tearing up. You know that.
Yeah. Sorry. I always have a hard time talking through that.
He knew that how he handled this would send a strong message to Renzo.
I had been talking with him about the need to really apply himself. At the age of 10, it's that point where if you want something, you really have to work at it. And here I am, facing this great challenge.
So, motivated to set an example, he headed back to work only 1 month later.
This was the most healthy thing about Chris.
Brian Bashan is executive director of the nonprofit Lighthouse for the Blind and Visually Impaired in San Francisco, and is blind himself.
He waited a few days until the stitches were out of his skull, and 30 days after brain surgery, he was back in the office thinking, okay, there's got to be a way to figure this out, and I'm going to figure it out.
Bashan's organization, the Lighthouse, helps people new to vision loss learn how to figure things out.
Let's try the first line.
When someone becomes blind, the odds are 99% they've never met another blind person.
Is that right?
Yeah, that really is true. Blind people need those role models. How to be blind, how to hold down a job, how to live an independent life.
Specifically, how to work in the kitchen safely.
Good morning.
How to navigate public transportation. How to use screen reading software to listen to emails as quickly as the rest of us read them.
Did you understand that?
Yes.
No. And most critically, how to get around in the world alone. Downey learned that at the Lighthouse. When you first crossed a big street like this on your own, was it terrifying?
That is absolutely terrifying.
I can imagine. I can totally imagine.
I remember that day stepping off the curb. You would have thought I was stepping into raging waters. Take a deep breath and go for it. You got to push through it.
Within a few months, he was traveling the streets on his own and getting back to normalcy with his son.
The first Father's Day came up. Rosa was like, so what do you want to do? You want to go on a picnic, go on a nice lunch? I want to play baseball with Renzo. And Renzo was like, he pops up. I could feel him like jump to the edge of his chair. Baseball, you want to play baseball?
So Dad would throw to me and I'd play like I was playing first base.
How could he throw the ball to you?
I'd just call out, I'm over here.
Yeah, there you go.
And he'd point and I'd say, yeah, that's right. And then he'd throw it at me.
But that's something I really loved about our relationship. He quickly was looking for possibilities. He wasn't seeing you can't do that. He was like, well, why not?
All right, here we go.
Downey seems to have a knack for finding windows when doors slam shut. Just 9 months after going blind, the recession hit, and he lost his job. But he got word that a nearby firm was designing a rehabilitation center for veterans with sight loss. They were eager to meet a blind architect. What are the chances?
You had to believe that God's hand came down.
It took my disability and turned it upside down. All of a sudden, it defined unique, unusual value that virtually nobody else had to offer.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Starting with that job, Downey developed a specialty, making spaces accessible to the blind. He helped design a new eye center at Duke University Hospital, consulted on a job from Microsoft, and signed on to help the visually impaired find their way in San Francisco's new and now delayed 4-block-long Transbay Transit Center, which we visited during construction.
If you're blind, you don't drive, all right? We don't like it when we drive. So, we're committed transit users. So the question was, how on earth do you navigate this size of facility if you're blind?
His solution? Grooves set into the concrete running the entire length of the platform.
Now we'll just follow following those grooves.
With a subtle change from smooth to textured concrete to signal where to turn to get to the escalators.
Would you like to give it a try?
Okay. I know to go straight because of this line, and I feel, oh my, so it's pretty obvious.
I can hear the
Really
difference from here.
It's something sighted people may never notice, and that's precisely the point. Downey believes in what's called universal design that accommodates people with disabilities, but is just as appealing to people without them. It's the approach he used for his biggest project yet, consulting on the total renovation of a new 3-story office space for his old training ground, the Lighthouse for the Blind.
Coming into blindness need not be some dreary social service experience, but rather more like coming into an Apple store, thinking that there might be something fun around the corner.
One of Downey's ideas was to break through and link the 3 floors with an internal staircase that sighted people can see and the blind can hear.
In blindness, it's so wonderful to be on the 9th floor and hear a burst of laughter up on the 11th floor, or to hear somebody playing the piano on the 10th floor.
For the hallways, Downey chose polished concrete because of the acoustics.
I can hear the special tap of somebody's cane or the click of a guide dog's toenails.
Click of a dog's toenail?
Yeah.
Well, is that good or bad?
That's great. It's like you're seeing somebody coming down the hall. I know the sound of individual people who work here by the way they use their cane or the kind of walk they have.
You can really distinguish between people by how they tap their cane.
Absolutely.
If you hadn't had Chris working on this building, a blind architect,
it wouldn't have been as rich or so subtle, for sure.
Last spring marked the 10-year anniversary of Downey losing his sight. So what did he do? He threw a party, a fundraiser for the Lighthouse, where he's been student, architect, and now president of the board.
Maybe a slightly bizarre thing, celebrating my 10-year blind birthday. But when you're 55 and you have a chance to be 10 again, you take it.
I get the feeling that you actually think you're a better architect today.
I'm absolutely convinced I'm a better architect today than I was sighted. To the north, okay.
If you could see tomorrow, would you still want to be able to feel the design?
If I were to get my sight back, it would be, I don't know. I would be afraid that I'd sort of lose what I've really been working on. I don't really think about having my sight restored. There'd be some logistical liberation to it, but will it make my life better? I don't think so.
In the world of skiing, there are 2 kinds of skiers. Those who like to stay on groomed runs and be guided gently around obstacles, and those who like to ski the whole mountain and ski towards the obstacles. That is called free riding. Man-made jumps, rails, and half-pipes are rejected in favor of the drops, jagged cliffs, and deep chutes created by Mother Nature. The sport of free riding took off in the 1990s and is now one of the fastest-growing disciplines in skiing. Given the risks inherent with the terrain, it attracts some of the bravest and most adventurous skiers in the world. But even among that group, 15-year-old Jacob Smith stands out. We thought you should see what he does, because he cannot. This is Big Sky, Montana, home to some of the steepest and most challenging ski slopes in the country. And that is Jacob Smith, who is blind. 3 years ago, he was just 12 years old as he made his way to the top of the 11,000-foot-high Lone Peak to ski down it. Watch this.
Dropping in 3, 2, 1.
Jacob drops into the Big Couloir, a narrow, rock-walled 1,400-foot chute. That dot is him, making his way turn by turn. A wrong move can be catastrophic. The run has a 50-degree slope, which means if you slip down the couloir, there's little chance you can stop yourself.
When you're standing at the top, you feel like if you move, you're gonna die.
And that's the moment most people would say, you know what, maybe not a good idea.
Yeah, but I'm kind of just like, well, I'm already up here, so I got to make it down somehow.
He did, and became the only legally blind athlete to ski the legendary run.
You did it!
That was awesome. History just has been made.
Forever.
How'd you feel when you made it to the bottom?
Excited that I did it. I didn't crash. I thought it was awesome. I guess we made it 4 more times, so I just wanted to do it again.
You were testing your luck that day.
Yeah.
We got Jacob Smith on course.
Jacob is still testing his luck and good sense. We met him in January at a junior regional free ride tournament in Big Sky. That's him, now 15 years old, competing against 40 other teenage daredevils, all of whom can see perfectly well.
Coming right off the top of that, finding pretty good landing.
This time, the background for all the competitors' spectacular experiment with gravity was another triple diamond chute, appropriately named DTM.
DTM stands for?
Don't tell mama.
It is an insane run, like a 45-degree slope.
Yeah.
Do the judges give you any slack for being blind?
No, 0.
Do you think they should?
No, I don't. I want to be treated normal so I compete with other sighted skiers.
It's not an insignificant difference. We worked with his doctors and our graphic artists to show roughly what Jacob can see on a run. He has extreme tunnel vision and no depth perception on top of that. It's blurry. His visual acuity is rated 2800, 4 times the level of legal blindness. Think of the big E on the eye chart. He would need it to be blown up 4 times in order to see it from 20 feet away.
Fantastic ski technique. You wouldn't be able to tell he's visually impaired.
So how does Jacob ski like this? His family keeps him on course.
Go up with your right ski really far.
On competition days, his little brother Preston patiently helps him hike to the top of the venue. It's so high, the lifts won't take you there.
First down, down, perfect, keep going.
Then his father Nathan helps him get down.
Nice turns.
Jacob has a 2-way radio turned up high in his pocket. His dad is on the other end at the base, somehow, calmly guiding him down.
Okay, right.
It's on me to make sure I don't let him down, that I get him in trouble. You know, that I have to guide him through narrower chutes or not go off a cliff.
You have to be his eyes.
Yeah.
And there can't be a delay. He can't say, are you sure, Dad?
Nope.
Have you ever missed it? Have you ever said, oh gosh, I forgot to tell him about that, or I didn't see that?
Oh, yeah, all the time. But his adaptation is pretty amazing.
How much do you trust him?
Well, I mean, enough to turn right when he tells me to.
Jacob's just putting his all into my dad's voice. It's crazy. Skiing, just listening to someone turn there, turn there.
Could you ski like that?
It's like closing your eyes, basically. It would be so hard.
Jacob's siblings are all competitive skiers. That's Andrew, who's 17, doing a 360. Preston is 14, and Julia is 12.
Do the other competitors know that he's blind?
Some do, but they always announce it over the intercom that blind skier Jacob coming down the hill.
He is the only ever, I have to say, blind skier.
That's when everyone turns and looks. Oh, it's a miracle. Look at him.
Would you know if you didn't know?
He's such a good skier for legally blind. Everybody's
they just get mad at him if he's in the way.
If we tell anybody that he's legally blind, then nobody believes us. They just give us a bad look.
Jacob was born with vision. Soon after he learned to walk, he was on skis. Family vacations were spent bombing down the trails in Big Sky with his family. But it was back home, at their ranch in North Dakota, that an unexpected obstacle changed Jacob's life. He started getting headaches and began bumping into things. He was 8 years old.
I ran into a wall or something that my mom saw, and then it was 2 days after I went to the eye doctor, and he took one look at my eyes, looked at my mom, and then just asked which hospital you want, because my optic nerve was swelling and bleeding.
Did you have any sense that things were going wrong up until that point?
No.
That day, Jacob was flown here to the Masonic Children's Hospital in Minneapolis, where he underwent an emergency 12-hour surgery after an MRI revealed a cancerous brain tumor the size of a softball that was crushing his optic nerve.
It's the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life. It looked like half his brain was a tumor.
So at that point, you're not thinking, I'm worried he's going to lose his vision. You're thinking,
I'm
worried
losing
he's
my
not
child.
gonna- You're going to lose your child.
I'm going to bury a kid.
In that first surgery, doctors removed enough of the tumor to relieve the pressure on Jacob's optic nerve to stop his vision from continuing to deteriorate. Here he is, leaving a message for his siblings a few days later.
I miss you all a lot. I really, really do. It's getting, my vision's getting better. I'm coming home and I'm really excited.
But Jacob would need 3 more major brain surgeries over the next 3 years, all before he was 12 years old.
My head feels okay?
Each time with an extensive rehabilitation.
Did you ever get down about it?
Like I did, but at the same time, I just prayed a lot.
When you were praying about it, were you praying this will be over? Were you praying I want to get my vision back? Or were you
Just
praying
to
I'll
let
stay alive?
that I'll stay alive and that'll get through it. And that's what happened.
Finally, in 2017, a course of radiation eradicated the cancer and Jacob got a clean scan. But his doctor said the radiation increased his lifetime risk of another brain tumor by up to 30%.
Right now, the tumor that we originally targeted is gone. You know, so far so good.
It doesn't sound like you've exhaled.
I don't think you ever exhale.
Because
There's always the what if. You know, when you get put into that situation that you never felt you ever should have been or expected, I don't think you're ever going to exhale and go, we're done.
whose idea was it to return to skiing?
Well, my dad's.
Turn and go straight through it.
So we came out here and we kind of just tried it out. Everywhere I went skiing for probably the first year or two was with either my dad or a coach.
You've taught your kid to ski, but you've never taught a blind child to ski.
No.
So you did not know what you were doing.
No.
So tell me about those early days.
Well, at first everyone said get a rope and a sign and he's going to be a blind skier and you're going to guide him. I'm like, nope, that's not an option. We're not going to do it that way.
Because why?
Because I'm not going to let that define him.
Father and son admit they're trying to carve their own path, sort of figuring it out as they go. Jacob says he's learned to listen for danger, other skiers, the churning of a lift, or icy conditions underfoot. And he says he remembers many of the runs from when he could see.
Can you feel your way down a run you didn't go on before you lost your vision?
I mean, yeah, I can, and I've done it.
And how does it work out?
It's pretty scary, and sometimes takes me a little minute.
That's got to be terrifying.
You get used to it.
How many crashes were there in those early days?
I don't even think I can count that high.
When Jacob was 10, he shattered his femur in 60 places when he skied into a tree.
Are you not nervous that there's going to be a catastrophic accident, that he could die doing this?
It's not the way I vision life. I don't look for the reasons not to do things. I'm not going to put him in something that I'm not going through first, that the consequences of falling are not going to be life-threatening.
What are you fearful of?
The only big fear I have is not succeeding.
You're more afraid of not succeeding than you are of getting hurt.
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I've already lost my vision, so a couple broken bones and a couple more mishaps, I guess, isn't a big deal to me at all.
Clearly he's fearless. As a parent, are you not fearful?
He's not reckless. He knows his limitations. I think he has the ability to ski anything on the mountain, but he's not going to go try to do it by himself. He wants to be with somebody he wants to trust. He won't ski with people he doesn't trust.
Nathan said Jacob is cautious about skiing and competing on low visibility days, when he can see even less than usual. Still, he finds a way of keeping up with his siblings. They are an enviable pack on the mountain.
Do you see him being like super plugged into everything else, right? To the sounds. He was saying he like hears the lift, the snow.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see?
His hearing is very like, he chooses what he wants to hear. So
What do you mean?
there's times at home where he'll be like, you could say his name 1,000 times and he'll pretend like he didn't hear one word. But then skiing, it's like, you could like flick and he'll like just turn, you know?
On competition day, Jacob suits up and sends it.
Dad, drop in 3, 2, 1.
Finishing 19th out of 41 competitors. For Jacob, success isn't about the trophy, it's about freedom, showing others how to negotiate obstacles, even when you can't see them coming.
Coming to the finish line. There you go.
Honestly, no matter what gets thrown in front of you, what kind of comes out of nowhere and strikes you, takes you off guard a little bit, there is always a way to conquer it, to adapt, to make it happen, and still do what you want to do.
Blindness and partial blindness are not epidemic here in the U.S., but they are in certain parts of the world. Our story is about 2 doctors who decided to do something about it. And incredibly, to date, they have restored sight to more than 150,000 people. Doctors they've trained have restored sight to 4 million more. Their partnership seems improbable. One is a hard-charging Ivy League American adrenaline junkie. The other, a serene Buddhist surgeon from the remote mountains of Nepal. We joined them on one of their most challenging missions in the isolated country of Burma. Their goal? To lead Burma out of darkness, one patient at a time. One by one, the patches are peeled away and the world comes back into focus. You're witnessing the moment when the people in this room realize they can see for the first time in years. Can you see my fingers? Their eyes and their faces begin to light up with a quiet sort of joy and wonder at the gift of sight. As they look around, they see who changed their world with an operation the day before that took just minutes. Beautiful. Doctors Jeff Tabin and Sanduk Ruit are eye surgeons, and now they are lifesavers. To hear Doctors Ruit and Tabin speak, they are the beneficiaries.
What's it like when that bandage is taken off and that person sees for the first time, sees you?
I may have seen it thousands of times, but every time there's a new tickle there. And I feel like my battery is being recharged.
I still get such a thrill when people don't expect or realize they're going to have their sight restored. And then the transformation when they see and the sort of moment of hesitation. What are they seeing? And then the smile. Good.
U Mint U hadn't seen for 2 years until this moment.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Others here had been blind for decades. They all had cataracts, a milky white buildup of protein that clouds the lens of the eye. In the U.S., they mainly afflict the elderly. Removing them, a routine operation. But here in Burma, also known as Myanmar, cataracts go untreated, and blindness is a way of life.
It's a Buddhist population. They're very fatalistic. They're very accepting. And there's almost an acceptance that you get old, your hair turns white, your eye turns white, and then you die. And the idea that you can actually have your sight restored has not really permeated all levels of Myanmar society.
What does that tell you about the state of eye care here?
Well, it's a place we can make a difference.
Burma is one of the poorest countries in Asia, slowly emerging from the darkness of decades of dictatorship. After years of trying, Tabin and Ruit finally were permitted to bring their treatment here. We met them in Tanji, in central Burma, where the lack of care has led to some of the highest rates of cataracts in the world. Through radio and pamphlets and conversation, word of the doctor's visit spread. Hundreds of Burmese who'd lost their sight found their way to Tanji's hospital with the help of caregivers, many trekking for days. Here, cataracts are not just a malady of old age. They take the sight of the very young, too, caused by infections and malnutrition.
I think it's better to redo it, you know.
By the time the doctors scrubbed in, the corridors were choked with people hoping to have their sight restored. Is it ever daunting? I mean, you look out there and you see that line of people, all who need this surgery.
It's daunting on a worldwide basis. There may be a long line, but this individual person, I'm going to give the very best care I can.
Dr. Ruiz set a rapid pace. He repaired an eye, the patient got up, the next patient was ready on an adjoining table. Just minutes an eye, then on to the next.
Hey, Cam, are they both blocked?
Dr. Tabin performed the delicate surgery just feet away.
You want to take a look? See how nice and clear that is? I don't know what that was, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And it's going from total blindness to great vision.
Wow. They kept up this pace until 7 in the evening. It's almost like an assembly line. Yeah. But assembly line sounds too mechanical. I mean, this is people's eyes you're dealing
people's
with.
lives. You know, once someone goes blind in the developing world, their life expectancy is about 1/3 that of age and health matched peers. And for a blind child, the life expectancy is 5 years. And also in the developing world, it takes often a person out of the workforce or a child out of school to care for the blind person. So when we restore sight to a blind person, we're freeing up their family and restoring their life.
Among the throng waiting to have their lives restored, we found Kanchi. Her son, a farmer, had been her eyes and devoted caretaker since cataracts took her sight.
What?
15-year-old Yanu had been blind since age 7. He was overwhelmed but grateful. Thank you, he said. Doctors Ruit and Tabin heard that a lot. In 4 days in Tanji, with the help of local doctors they were training, they performed 503 cataract surgeries. Her eyes now bandaged, Kanchi waited with her son. We were going to be performing as many cataract surgeries as the hospital does normally in a year.
Yeah. We are basically here to ignite fire of the possibility of doing high quality, high volume cataract surgery. It is still possible.
You want to ignite a fire here.
Ignite a fire here.
As long as he can remember, Sanduk Ruit has been burning to change the world around him. He grew up desperately poor in this village with no electricity or running water high in the Himalayas of Nepal. The nearest school was a 15-day walk away. Ruit's illiterate parents saw education as the way out for their children, but the grip of poverty and poor health was too strong to escape. His younger sister, with whom he was very close, died of tuberculosis.
I saw her pass away in front of me, and then there's a very strong determination from inside that maybe this is the profession that I should take and make healthcare available for my countrymen.
That determination took him to medical school in India. He came back to Nepal, an eye doctor, committed to bringing modern care to remote mountain villages. The documentary, Out of the Darkness, showed them carrying equipment on their backs. His team hiked for days. His goal, as revolutionary as it was simple, to cure blindness in the third world with a quick, cheap technique to remove cataracts.
Could you translate?
Soon, the medical world took notice, and so did a young Jeff Tabin.
I imposed myself on Sandak and came to work in Nepal.
What did you think of him when he first showed up?
You know, I was a bit scared in the beginning, you know. He had tremendous energy. He would never get tired. Energy in working, energy in eating, energy in drinking, energy in talking, you know.
It was like being hit by a human avalanche. Fitting, since Jeff Tabin's passion was mountaineering, more than medicine. He'd raced through Yale, Oxford, and Harvard Medical School, but he had made his name as one of the first people to climb the highest peak on every continent. He met Dr. Ruit and thought he'd found his next challenge. Ruit was skeptical. This frenetic young man had the same dedication to ophthalmology he had to adventure.
I sent him to a hospital in eastern part of Nepal in the middle of summer, and I said he's not going to survive there.
During the summer in the monsoon, it's quite oppressive. It's sort of 100 degrees, 105, with a 99% humidity and lots of mosquitoes.
Wait a minute, you sent him to a difficult place on purpose?
Difficult, definitely, yeah.
Did you know that he was testing you?
No, I thought he sent me there because there was so much need. I scratched my mosquito bites and was excited to go to work, that there were all of these blind people that, you know, I could make a difference in their life.
He won you over?
Yes, definitely.
Their relationship has grown from teacher-student to collaborators and friends. Like yin and yang, these opposites complement each other. They created the Himalayan Cataract Project, started here at Tilganga, Ruit's hospital in Kathmandu. They perfected the procedure called small incision cataract surgery. Just one small splice, the cataract comes out, a new man-made lens goes in, no stitches required. It's quick and costs about $20. How does the quality of care you're providing here compare to the quality of care you'd be able to provide
for these
in the US?
Advanced cataracts? I'm performing the same quality of surgery that I would be doing in America.
Dr. Tabin spends most of his year at the University of Utah, where cataract surgery costs a couple $1,000s an eye. He might do 4 or 5 a day.
One eye here and then one eye there.
Here, he does that many in a half hour, removing cataracts he'd never see in the U.S. because they'd never go untreated so long. Their project is funded by donations and grants. They're able to keep costs down because they don't use expensive equipment, and they make their own lenses at their factory in Nepal. The lenses are crucial to the process. They're a permanent implant. Each costs about $4. In the U.S., because of strict safety requirements, they can cost 50 times more. Comparable quality?
Very comparable. I put that in my mother's eyes.
So far, they've operated in 24 countries, including North Korea, Ethiopia, and now Burma.
So tell me what you think of this, okay?
They've brought hundreds of doctors, including the Burmese doctors working with them, to Tilganga for training. And everywhere they go, they train other doctors to carry on their work once they've moved on.
How many fingers?
5.
We saw the immediate benefit the morning after surgery.
How many?
1.
The patients gathered in a Buddhist monastery.
Yeah.
As the bandages came off, first wonder, then smiles and celebration. Remember U Mint U, blind for 2 years? His family sent us this picture. He can read again, his favorite pastime. 15-year-old Yanu, blind half his life, seemed somewhat bewildered by this new world of sight.
He saw his son now.
For Kanchi, the wait was over. Her son was overcome when she saw his face for the first time in years. Then there was this woman.
This is the first time she's been able to see in months?
Yes, sir.
She called Doctors Ruit and Tabin gods. They assured her they are not. But in this room, it certainly seemed they had performed miracles. The doctors recently got more good news. The Himalayan Cataract Project is one of 8 semi-finalists for a $100 million grant from the MacArthur Foundation.
Most of us take for granted that we can instantly recognize people we know by looking at their faces. It's so automatic, it almost sounds silly to even say it. Friends can put on a hat, cut their hair, and still we know them by their face. We can do this for thousands upon thousands of faces without ever giving it a moment's thought. But imagine for a second what life would be like if you couldn't. If your wife or husband looked like a stranger. You couldn't tell your kids apart. Couldn't recognize yourself in a mirror. Well, that's what life is like for people who suffer from a mysterious condition called face blindness or prosopagnosia that can make it nearly impossible to recognize or identify faces. If you've never heard of face blindness, you're not alone. Chances are your doctor hasn't either. It's been unknown to most of the medical world until very recently. Hearing about it can feel a little like entering the twilight zone, but for people who are face blind, the condition is very real. Jacob Hodes is one of them. He's 31 years old, he has a college degree, has had great jobs, and he seems perfectly normal. Just don't ask him to identify any faces. We're going to put up the first one. Even very famous ones.
No idea.
We showed Jacob faces without hair. A pure test of facial recognition.
No. Nope. Can't say if I've ever seen that person.
He has seen Jimmy Carter plenty of times and knows Michael Jordan too.
Oh, Lord.
He just can't recognize their faces.
No, that's just impossible. I mean,
Can you describe my face? You're staring right at it.
high cheekbones, light eyes.
Clearly, Jacob could see my face, but he says if we happen to run into each other in a few days, he wouldn't know me from any other woman with short blonde hair.
They meet somebody, they have a good time with them, they have a nice relationship, then a week later they walk past them.
Brad Duchesne is a professor at Dartmouth College who's been studying face blindness for nearly 15 years. He says the hardest thing to understand is how people can see a familiar face but not recognize it. So he created a demonstration to give me a little taste. Faces turned upside down.
So here are some famous faces. You're going to be tempted to twist your head, but don't do it.
Okay.
Now,
Boy,
can you
that is
identify any of these
hard.
people?
I was completely at a loss. You think I'd know all of these people?
You've seen them all a lot.
I don't know any of these people. I really don't.
Do you want to see them upright?
Sure. It was astonishing. With just that click, they became recognizable people before my eyes. I know John Travolta, I know Morley. And there was Denzel Washington, Jennifer Aniston, Sandra Bullock. But the one that really got me was the young woman on the lower right, my daughter. I didn't know my own daughter?
Yeah.
I didn't know my own daughter.
So there she is.
So am I getting a feeling for what people with face blindness have?
This is, when you look at that, there's a face there.
Oh,
there
yeah.
are parts, there are eyes, there's mouth, but you just can't put it together.
That's stunning. I feel terrible for them now.
Yeah, it's
I
really
do.
difficult.
And largely unknown. Prosopagnosia only got its name in the 1940s when a couple of soldiers came back from World War II with head injuries and couldn't recognize their wife or parents. And it took another 50 years for science to discover that people could be born face blind, like Jacob Hodes, and Joe Livingston, a retired teacher, Ben Dabrowski, a software products designer, and Meg Novotny, a doctor. If I were your patient, you'd spent a long time with me discussing a problem. I come back the next time.
Oh, no. You walk out to the window at the front and start checking out, and I walk out of the room and I don't know who you are.
Come on. She relies on patient charts, she told us. But there aren't any of those in Ben's office, where lunch in the cafeteria can be tricky.
Sitting down at lunch having a discussion with someone about one of my projects, and the guy across the table gets up from lunch and says, God, that's really interesting. When you have that meeting, can you invite me? Thanks, see ya. Who is it? I don't know.
Who is it?
I have no idea.
Is it a memory issue? What is
The
it?
memory's never created.
The face doesn't get
It doesn't get filed.
So they have to rely on other strategies to identify people: hair, body shape, the way people walk, their voice, even style of dress. But Jacob told us that it can all fall apart when someone changes their hair, like a colleague named Sylvia, who he couldn't find one day until she started putting her hair into her usual ponytail.
And she put it into the ponytail, and once it was in place, that was Sylvia. It clicked. Then she took her hair back out of that ponytail.
Right then and there?
Yep. She just put it in and then took it out.
So she went from Sylvia, not Sylvia, Sylvia, not Sylvia?
She disappeared.
Come on.
Yeah.
To him, it was as though her face had changed into someone else's before his eyes.
So now I'm confronted with this situation that got weird because I knew this person was Sylvia, but it didn't feel like Sylvia.
Faces mean so much to us: identity, beauty, character, a place to hang all our memories about a person. Faces have captivated artists forever, so it may surprise you to learn that the man who painted these faces, renowned portraitist Chuck Close, is also face blind, and severely so. Let's say you went out to have dinner with somebody, and then you saw her the next day.
Wouldn't remember her.
And yet he has spent his career, even after a collapsed spinal artery left him mostly paralyzed, painting, well, faces.
Yes.
Chuck Close has face blindness, and he paints faces.
Right. The reason I think I was driven to it was to take images of people that matter to me and commit them to memory in the best way I can, which is to slow the whole process down, break it down into lots of little memorable pieces.
Which is exactly how he creates these works. He can't make sense of a whole face, so he works from a photograph with a grid on it and translates what he sees square by square onto his canvas. Well, guess what we've done?
I don't know.
We've put together a quiz for you. We brought some of our famous faces along to show him.
From the chin, I think it's Leno.
And we're surprised that he did pretty darn well.
Well, from the lips, I think it's Tiger Woods.
Yeah, well, you're pretty good. But of course, not perfect.
I don't have a clue.
That's Tom Cruise.
Right now, my guts are tied in knots because this very activity is the thing that makes me most nervous. Oh, now I have to figure out who this person is.
Because he isn't recognizing these faces the way most of us do. Every face is a puzzle he has to solve.
What I'm thinking, you don't see too many people with just a mustache anymore. So that means it's probably somebody who's not alive. So if it's an African American of a certain age with a mustache, it might be Martin Luther King.
You're amazing. You deduce. You're like Sherlock Holmes here.
Yeah, so this is how I get through life.
Of course, he knew we were showing him famous faces. With our group, we threw in a trick one, a photo of Joe's daughter. Does anybody know who that is?
No way.
No. Joe, work on it, because it's somebody that Joe knows.
Well, it may be, but nothing's coming.
It's someone in your family. But still she didn't get it. It's your daughter. Now can you see it? Is it clear now? Or?
It is believable now.
We were baffled that a condition so extreme it could keep people from recognizing their own children could have been almost completely unknown until very recently.
World-renowned neurologist and writer, Dr. Oliver Sacks.
We asked Dr. Oliver Sacks, the famous chronicler of fascinating and bizarre neurological conditions, who wrote about face blindness in his latest book, The Mind's Eye.
It is with our faces that we face the world.
How do you explain that the medical world did not identify this problem?
It is not usually a complaint of people. People do not bring it up. Many people who are colorblind do not know of it until they take an army medical. One sort of assumes that other people are the way one is.
It never, ever, ever in my life occurred to me that people would look at a face and just get it like that.
I believe that I was not good with people, but I had no idea of the reason. I just thought I was stupid.
Joe only learned there was such a thing as face blindness when she stumbled across this article and came in to be tested in Duchenne's lab. A few hours after her second visit,
No.
In a bizarre coincidence, she and Duchesne ended up attending the same event.
I kept placing my face in a position where she could see it.
I realised that one of the group was staring at me in a way that people don't normally.
And so finally, at one point I said, do you know who I am? And she put it all together.
Duchesne had seen face blindness in action. Joe had seen the misconnections of her life.
If that had been anybody else, they would have been presumably furious, would not have spoken to me, and would probably never have spoken to me again. But I would never have known they were there.
Yeah.
It made me realise, how many times have I done this?
Right. How many friends have you offended? How many people aren't talking to you, and you don't know why?
And we'll never know.
Yeah.
People do think you may be snubbing them or stupid or mad or inattentive. That's why it's so important to recognize what one has and to admit it.
Which is exactly what Sachs himself has just done, written about the fact that he too is face blind.
I have had difficulty recognizing faces for as long as I can remember. My problem extends not only to my nearest and dearest, but also to myself. I've sometimes had the experience of apologizing to someone and realizing it's a mirror.
No.
I have indeed.
Because you didn't know it was you?
I could see that it was a large, clumsy man with a beard. Now, I've now found a way of dealing with this. I have one special feature. I have rather large ears. And if the large, clumsy man with a beard has extra large ears, it's probably me.
I shouldn't be smiling, but it's funny.
Oh, well, it is fair. I mean, these things are both comic and serious.
And surprisingly common. Recent studies show as many as 1 in 50 people may be face blind. And the search is on for clues inside their brains. We'll show you what the research is finding, plus, would you believe, super recognizers.
I would say Mike Wallace.
That is Mike Wallace, who never forget a face.
I don't even know how to get rid of people.
When we come back. No one knows what causes lifelong face blindness. It was discovered so recently, scientists are just beginning to unravel its secrets. And some of the clues are coming from people who once had normal face recognition, but lost it after suffering damage to part of the brain. And in an interesting twist, those people are also offering insight into the way the rest of us recognize faces. Imagine waking up after a trauma and not being able to recognize the people closest to you. That's what happened to Colleen Castaldo. Up until the fall of 2009, did you have any trouble recognizing faces at all?
No, not at all.
Like everybody else?
Like everybody else, yeah.
That all changed late one night when Colleen had a seizure and was rushed to the hospital. Her doctors found a brain tumor and did surgery to remove it. But as she recovered, she started noticing that something wasn't right.
The nurses. I thought that I was meeting them each for the first time. And then I would, listen to them and think, I don't know, they were acting like they knew me already.
Oh, disorienting. She figured it was the medication until her close friend Doreen came to visit wearing white, and Colleen assumed she was part of the medical staff.
I looked at her, smiled, and I turned back to my husband and started to talk to him, and he stood up and said, Doreen. And I looked, I thought, Doreen? And then it hit me. I knew right then and there, this is the problem I had been having.
Faces.
Faces.
Now, even faces she knew well before.
No.
Okay, well, that's George Clooney.
Oh, wow, no, I wouldn't know that.
Are a mystery to her.
No, I don't know who that is. Who is it?
The president.
So this is the right hemisphere here.
Brad Duchesne showed me an MRI scan of Colleen's brain.
Is that a hole in her brain?
That's right. It's in the right temporal lobe.
So back here.
That's right.
And the location of that hole where the tumor had been was a clue. If removing that area caused the loss of face recognition, could that be where all our brains process faces? It turns out that neuroscientists have been trying to figure out how it is that our brains recognize faces for decades.
Face recognition is a very difficult problem because all faces are basically the same.
MIT neuroscientist Nancy Canwisher.
There are these two roundish things here, there's this thing there, there's this thing there. They're all the same. And so discriminating one face from another is a very computationally difficult thing because it's those subtle differences in the same basic structure that distinguish one thing from another.
And it is exactly those subtle differences face-blind people like Joe Livingston miss.
I could describe anything that I can put into words. Eye colour, general overall shape, whether your ears stick out. But those things would bring it down, perhaps from the population of the world, to a few million.
So she could say this person has dark eyes, high cheekbones, an oval face, which would allow Joe to distinguish her from this person. But this face and this face? Impossible.
I can say what I can see, but I cannot say the micro measurements that are what tell a normal person that it's you and not somebody of the same specification.
But how is it that the rest of us can perceive these two people as distinct individuals despite the similarities? An important clue comes from what we can't distinguish. As we saw earlier, faces upside down. Like these two Duchenne showed me, which looked very similar.
Maybe you don't even see that there's any difference
I see something
between...
different in the lower lip. Eyes are a little different under the eyes.
The eyes are a little different. But then if I show them to you upright, so here's the one that you saw on the left there, looks perfectly normal. And then here's the one you saw on the right, you saw upside down.
The eyes and mouth in the photo on the right had been turned upside down.
And now the face looks really grotesque.
Yeah,
but
upside down.
Upside down, it's really hard to see that.
If you look at a face upside down, you're very bad at recognizing it. If you look at a word or an object or a scene, you can recognize it fine upside down.
So what did that tell you?
It tells you that there's something very special about face recognition. It works in a very different way from recognition of everything else.
And that got Canwisher wondering if there might be a part of the brain responsible just for seeing faces. She started putting people with normal face recognition into MRI scanners and watching what happens in their brains as they looked at different images.
Is this what she's seeing?
This is what she's seeing.
She's seeing faces.
Exactly.
Okay.
And now she's seeing objects because we want to know not just what parts of the brain are active when you see faces, but what parts are more active when you see faces than when you see objects.
Canwisher discovered that there was indeed a place in the brain that becomes very active when we look at faces.
And in every subject, boom, there was this nice big response there. It was very exciting.
And it was right in the same area where Colleen's tumor had been. It's called the fusiform face area. So could that be what's missing in people with lifelong face blindness, like Jacob Hodes? Canwisher put him in the scanner to find out.
I really did not expect to see a fusiform face area.
So you thought there'd be nothing there, like as if instead of having a bullet go through it, he was just born without it.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And we looked at the data, and his face area was beautiful. It's textbook.
She scanned Joe, Ben, and Meg as well, and they had fusiform face areas too.
So what does that say to you?
It tells us that the problem is not that this thing doesn't exist. There it is. But see, that's the fun of science. It's fun to be told you're just completely and totally wrong, because now you have to go back and, think anew.
And one thing she and other researchers are thinking about is a phenomenon as mystifying as face blindness.
Thank you. Have a good day.
It's polar opposite. Super recognizers like Jennifer Jarrett, who say they recognize almost every face they have ever seen.
Waiters?
Yes.
Salespeople?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, like of
absolutely.
course.
Yes. I'll be walking down the street and I'll see someone and I'll think, oh, retail. And then I'll remember, oh, okay, that person works at whatever store, and that's where or they used to work at that store 10 years ago. And then I remember.
10 years ago?
Yes, yes.
So it doesn't matter how far back you saw these people. So as long as you look at a person and take notice, they're in there.
I don't even know how to get rid of people.
Only a handful of super recognizers have been discovered so far, and Duchenne and his colleagues had to come up with a whole new way to test them.
So here are 3 faces here, which you're familiar with.
I am?
It's called the Before They Were Famous test, because super recognizers can also recognize faces as they change through time.
Does that help at all? He no longer has hair. Yeah. That's Dick Cheney.
Oh my God, that's Dick Cheney?
Yeah.
He told me the top right was Richard Gere and the bottom, Nancy Pelosi. Those three people have changed dramatically. He even gave me a hint with this one. He's now an actor.
And I'm supposed to know this actor?
Clearly, I am not a super recognizer.
That's George Clooney.
Man. And these super recognizers just
The
know
supers
this.
are really good at recognizing these faces.
George Clooney.
How could you tell it was George Clooney?
It just looked like George Clooney to me. Isn't it? Oh, Prince Charles. Oh, Madonna. Michael Jordan. Oh, that's Kato Kalin.
The O.J. Simpson
Yes.
trial. Wow, you are good.
But we thought we had finally stumped her with this one. She said she only had a guess.
If I were to guess, I would say Mike Wallace.
That is Mike Wallace.
She recognized Mike Wallace as a 6-year-old.
I don't even understand how you do that. I can't fathom it.
As people age, I guess the aging process somehow in my brain just seems very sort of superficial, and as if someone gets a haircut, you can still recognize them. It's still the same face to me. It's just the adult version.
So why is 60 years like a haircut to her, while face-blind people can't recognize someone they just saw? A team of scientists at Harvard has begun scanning the brains of super recognizers too, to see if they might yield any clues. The science of facial recognition is in its infancy, but new discoveries can't come fast enough for one last person we'd like you to meet, 13-year-old Tim McDonough from Boston, who is severely face-blind.
So can you describe what it feels like when someone comes up, you know you're supposed to know who they are?
I usually just say, hi, nice to see ya.
So you sometimes pretend?
Yeah.
You fake it?
I fake it out, yeah.
So you think it's not your mom?
Yeah.
Okay. So that actually was your mom.
Tim is working with the Harvard team to see if they can help him learn to recognize his mother's face.
Now, is this one your mom or not? So we could start at the top. We could do eyebrows, eyes, nose. You could even use the cheeks there.
It's part of a pilot program to see if face blindness might someday be treatable.
This one's a little bit harder.
So far, it's not.
I don't know. I just hope that nobody tries to talk to me, because if they do, they
want to talk about something you've done with them or something.
And I don't know who they are.
So it must be really hard to make friends.
It is, yeah. It takes me a while to make friends.
It turns out making friends can be tricky at both ends of the face recognition spectrum. Super recognizers can seem like stalkers.
I would see someone, weeks or months later at a party, and people would say, oh, do you know each other? And I'd say yes, and the other person would say no. And I'd say, no, don't you remember the first week of classes? You were walking to English class with someone, and people would look at me really strangely and sort of uncomfortably, I think, a lot.
Jennifer says she's now learned to take cues from others, ironically, just as face-blind people do.
I'll play this eye contact game where I'll wait. I'm not going to really look at you, but I'll wait to see if you look at me, and then, oh, you look at me, oh, look, oh, hi.
So you're always waiting for a cue from them.
Yeah, so I'll hang back a little bit, which I don't want to do.
In any social situation, are you always a little anxious?
I'm more than a little anxious, and I tend to keep my mouth closed before I make some awful blunder. Of course, another tactic or strategy is to smile at everybody.
That's what Chuck Close told us he does.
You have to be really charming. If you are going to insult them by not remembering them, you just have to be extremely charming so that people don't hold this stuff against you.
Do you feel now that you're missing out on something?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I notice a loss. I understand someone by an abstraction. I put together a set of information that to me means mother or means Lesley.
But it's not a visualization of a face.
And the thing that I wonder next, is how does it affect even things like love?
How does it?
When people talk about love, they say, I carry the person with me. I carry their image with me. I don't carry their image. Does that mean I experience it differently? And how would I ever know? I don't know.
There's a long tail of stuff that happens that you're missing, connections you're not making.
Still.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
At least now we understand why.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's therapeutic, but it doesn't fix it.